Peter Smith, orator telemarketer. And firstly, I'd just like to recognise the Indigenous custodianship of the lands in which we work and play. We'd like to remind our participants of our role as educators in bringing meaningful discourse around the issues of Indigenous connection to land and reconciliation. Secondly, I'd just like to recognise the management team, which has expanded slightly since we last had the Outhaus. And I'd just like to thank Cherie, David, Ellen, and our new member, Henry, for all the tireless work they do promoting, supporting, maintaining, and helping me tirelessly with this essential community project. Later in the show, we're actually going to hear a bit of some exciting news from Cherie and Henry, but I'll leave that as a bit of a mystery. And today, as we unpack the world of the freelancer in the outdoors, I'd just like to welcome Jared and welcome all freelancers and all managers of freelancers to the Outhaus. And thank you very much for giving of your time. I know everyone's really busy, but I think it's a very pertinent conversation. If you've canoed or climbed for cash, carried a pack for pay, or roped or rafted for reimbursement, then this is the conversation for you. And I just wanted to say that again, because I spent hours putting that together. Whilst all this has been going on, no doubt David has been sharing the agenda, so we might just start the discussion around freelancing and what's actually going on in the world of freelancing. Is there work for freelancers? Are people feeling like there's no work for freelancing? Are you feeling like there's some work for freelancing? And people who are actually managing freelancers, how is that going? And have things changed potentially since the beginning of the pandemic back in late March of this year? So I'll just open it up to people maybe making some initial comments about those things I've mentioned.
I guess I'll start, Pete. I'm in an interesting situation at the moment. I've been offered a little bit more work outside of the industry at the moment, which is sustaining me whilst there's no work through, or very little work through Coefficient initially, who I work for primarily in a part-time contractual manner, supplying outdoor facilitation services across the southeast and nationally. There was, I think, 1 or 2 days about a week ago that was offered at a centre, a YMCA centre, but there's been very little up to this point here in the southeast. I'm just wondering how other people in Queensland specifically and other places might have been seeing the work unfolding, if at all, coming back at this point.
Yeah, Dave, I'm in a similar position to you, doing a bit more work outside the industry. I've seen a bit come next month, which is looking promising. But a few programs that I've been kind of asked to work on are in New South Wales, so I'll be interested to see what happens with the Queensland-New South Wales border and how that impacts those programs as to whether they go ahead, whether I can get down to them, and how it looks, because I think it's still a very evolving situation at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see there.
See, Andrew's just arrived. Andrew Boyle's just arrived. It's going to be real interesting. With Victoria effectively now shut down for 6 weeks, I think it's going to be a huge impact, I guess, in terms of both program delivery down there, which will go to zero if it hasn't already, but also the huge pool of freelancers down there who are both geographically locked in place for 6 weeks, but also potentially, what will happen to the industry? Are they going to go back and have to reset again for fourth term? Or is this year a complete sort of, is it all going to be into too hard basket come this year? Andrew, you got any opinions? We're just opening it up for a general discussion. And anything you've heard, actually.
I know. So I'm doing some freelance work here in New South Wales. Where I am, there's not much going on. I live in Nelson Bay area. There's a few things, and I've been lucky to get a little bit of work with some of the local companies, Out and About Adventures. I've had one gig with them doing abseiling, and then I have a friend who does nature play. And so I've been able to do a few sessions with her. So that's a little bit different, but outdoor education all the same. It's been really fun, but it's also, I mean, other than those two things, I haven't really heard of anything going on around here, making it very difficult to find that type of casual work. So personally, I've been looking into going into other types of work rather than just recreation, since there isn't much available, and just looking at opportunities that kind of, I guess, relate as much as possible. One of the, like, National Park Service, I've applied for a few jobs with them, and then also with there's a koala sanctuary up here, so it'd be group management and that kind of work, but similar but not quite outdoor education.
Thanks, Sheree. Do other people in the room, I guess, what's going on for you now, and then perhaps people could maybe comment. And it'd be nice to hear from a few people who are actually managing staff. Welcome, Andrew, Critter. How they're going to go in sort of, 6 months, a year's time. Like, can we sort of, is the freelance world going to change, or how is that going to be? And I just noticed Dave Chitty came to the chat. Welcome, Dave. Anyway, let's have some comments on that, if people don't mind.
It's a difficult one, I think, Pete, because it depends on how long everything sort of continues to go the way it's going. Like, Victoria's locked down. We don't know where things are in New South Wales, but we're probably not too far behind. And then Queensland's probably not too far behind again. In reality, I think it's really one of those things where you just don't know what's going to happen, because it's indeterminate as to how long the whole process will be. I mean, we've still got people trying to get programs up and going at the moment, and there's bits and pieces floating around, but and everyone wants to get more out there, but I think it just comes down to what's going to happen further along. I think having the COVID plans in place up here have sort of helped to get things started, but I think it'll really come down to what happens in that public health space, and trying to sort of I suppose from a Queensland perspective, keep things moving as best we can until we get shut down, because it's 6 weeks. 6 weeks currently. Well, 6 weeks takes us pretty much into term 4, and then then there's the end of the year. So if stuff shuts down now, it's really not until next year that we find out what's going to happen. So it's sort of a bit of a minefield. And I've heard a few places, different places have sort of just shut it up for the short, through to the end of the year anyway. So we might be in a, it's not too far off saying that until next year, that there's not going to be much much really happening. What happens when things do start up again? I don't know. I don't know what organisations are still going to be up and running. I don't know what's going to happen with various stuff. I mean, you know, in the freelance market, people will probably start to look at, like Cherie was saying, start looking at other spaces to move into, and whether some of those people will come back, I don't know. Some probably will, and some probably will end up being quite happy in their new position. But I think that's all part of the unknown of this game. It's just sort of, it seems to have slowly starting to sort of get the idea of it's always going to be a do what you can and just wait and see is really where it's at.
Yeah, thanks for that, Critter. Like, I've just noticed that some of our Western Australian members have come into the house, so welcome. Like, is the situation different dramatically in the West, or what do other people, like, from other states think about this whole conversation about the world of the freelancer, both now and moving forward?
I think there's going to be some changes, or need to be and will be some changes to the way we employ people. I mean, in the past, certainly many operators have employed freelance guides who have ABNs, but probably don't have their own insurance or land managing permits. And that's been a fiddle thing. My insurance companies advise me that any contractor, whether they're a freelance guy or another operator, must have their own insurance for the activities they're running, linked to the land they're going to run it on with us, and that they must have the appropriate land management permits. So I think there'll be a tightening up in that area, and perhaps it's something we should have gone away from anyway. People running on an ABN when they're really not running a business. The other thing we've always moved to in more recent years is that we won't sort of put a Facebook ad out and saying, hey, we need an abseil instructor for next week. We train people. We try and get some new people in from time to time, train them so they become part of our team. More recently, we've trained them in COVID situations. Unfortunately, we've now not able to work, of course, but the idea there is, and rather than someone that comes in and disappears, even if they only might be working occasionally, they've actually been brought in and been through learned about our business, the way we operate, and in this case, how to run COVID stuff. So we might have to get a bit more professional about how we employ all types of different people, for their benefit of the leaders as well.
David, is that obviously each state by state has a different HR requirements and parks requirements for their leaders, and I know in WA there's probably, and Jamie might be able to speak to this. I think I just saw that he's in the room.
Yeah, mate.
That there's still a requirement for parks permits in WA to have their outdoor leaders to have NOLAS registration, and I know that's been probably taken up in WA, but not anywhere else around the country. Is there a space coming out of the pandemic or during this potential lockdown period, that we can start looking at the freelance industry as a bigger pool that we need to be more supportive of across the country as a whole? So bringing all these different parks departments together to have a consensus on what the quality and the level of your instructing staff might be in lead activities. Anyone got opinions on those?
Well, I think Jamie would, but I think that's something that the Outdoor Council of Australia, which needs to strengthen its involvement in the whole outdoor industry, could be taking up and looking at competency qualification, how we move people around from state to state. I think we've got an opportunity to build a bit of a new world in the way we employ our people, pay them and look after them.
Jamie, is that still the case in WA?
Yeah, it certainly is at the moment, David. And some of it's historical in terms of, identifying currency within leadership. I don't think that there's still great solution to that. There's obviously still a need to ensure that we have people that are out there and keeping their skills up. I certainly can say that part of the challenge that was found here through a number of community courses was, we'd train people and then see the same people on a different type of assessment 6 to 12 months later, and their skill base had definitely decreased. Their awareness of that had not. So I think, we always, I guess, and this is probably the challenge in this COVID type of arrangement, people come out and think, I'm just as good as I ever was. And the reality is that's not true, that if we're not constantly sharpening the saw, then it's likely that that skill base will diminish over time. So, how do we continue to encourage and support that professional development? Certainly, good employers do that through individual professional development, but the challenge, I think, for the sector is encouraging and providing those opportunities to live together. In terms of our position at the moment, I can say that we're quite fortunate here in Western Australia. It is positive. Just today, in fact, a couple of job advertisements have landed on my desk to promote here in the sector for people that are chasing outdoor instructors in a range of areas. So I think that from our perspective, people are thinking that there's going to be an increase over the next couple of months in activity. Already we're benefiting from the change in policy from the Department of Education that we're strongly advocated for just over a month ago, and that changed to mean that school groups prior to the school holidays were able to start booking into camps and setting up expedition planning, and that has meant that rolling into term 3 and for the early part of term 4, we're seeing those bookings being cemented. And then that means that people are going, well, I need, another 2 or 3 people that can assist on that program, dependent upon the sizing of what they need. And I guess the challenge, certainly for WA, is traditionally we've been used to having instructors fly in from other parts of the country, on a cheap Jetstar flight, and then, you get your accommodation, which is a shiny bit of, fabric, and we'll feed you. So on your way, get to see the best of the West. But that's certainly not happening at the moment. And so we'll be scrambling around to, see the best of the West or improve people here to, get them involved with programs. And I think maybe what that may mean is that the scaling back of some programs in terms of, to ensure that the risk is well managed.
I just on the West thing, I made that connection years ago when Andrew had a job out, I think in WA, or had a connection with PLC, and I got to meet all the PLC crew and Ellen and Liam out there, and then you meet up again at national conferences and you have that connection, and it's amazing to be able to have a workforce that's fairly fluid but can actually move around within reason. I've also worked recently, well, not recently, but in the last 12 months in Victoria and Canberra for various organisations and New South Wales, again through Coefficient. But it's nice to be able to get around and see different parts of the world and see what the practices are within other freelance pools or within other organisations, and even if it's just for a couple of days here and there to see what's going on. I was just wondering, I'll let Pete have the mic again in a second, but this was my topic. I sort of suggested this, so it's a bit of a passion. Laurie, what's happening in New South Wales in terms of freelancing? How does the market there sort of work at the moment at all? I'd just be interested because it's a little bit removed from what we know here in Southeast Queensland.
Yeah, look, good question, and I suppose it depends on who you talk to, because some of the bigger organisations are pivoting quite well into different spaces. OEG has opened themselves up to the family market and actually asked for a lot of families to consider a connection, a weekend excursion together, and they're marketing to that audience quite effectively to make up the difference, because as probably everyone's aware, we haven't resumpted in camps yet. We wish we're in the same position as Jamie, and we're very jealous. But it's continually been an issue, and obviously with the news so evident from Victoria and even our recent cases here, the state government and Department of Education is even more risk adverse. I had a piece of correspondence from them on Friday which clearly indicated that they're recommending to schools to only place tentative bookings and make sure the cancellation policies are in place. So if COVID is an issue, that they can pull out and not lose any money. So not reassuring. But yeah, there's businesses that that would normally do school camps or education programs that have started to open up as caravan parks and pivoting in that way. So it's quite interesting in the fact that I'm asking them, and I haven't got enough data to be able to share with you today, but that's why I'm really keen to talk to you today on this topic. I just wanted to feel generically what was actually happening out there. Because I feel that there's an opportunity here. If we're connecting with more of a tourism market and starting to show what we have as a sector in this space and giving them a taste of what that offers, it'll only benefit the sector as a whole, because our awareness of what we actually do is not that, it's not out there. And I think if we start tapping into some of these really opportunistic areas, that it will benefit us further down the track. The other thing I'd say, and I threw a question up there, is anyone looking at, to Jamie's point, are you looking at upskilling yourself now as you're contemplating the next move? Because I don't think we're going to see these fee-free opportunities for forever. And it's certainly something that I've been encouraging a lot of the freelancers to take up, particularly in New South Wales. And I was just typing to Rosie, I don't know what the requirements are on if you have to be a New South Wales resident. I'm sure there's something in there. But there is so many different training courses that the government has offered at no cost that is certainly an opportunity that if you wanted to tap into some of that. Don't know whether that answers your question, Dave, because it really does depend on who you talk to. But yeah, that's why I wanted to. Yeah, sorry, Sheree.
It's okay. My question is, where are these free sessions happening?
That's what I was just going to put in the chat for you.
Just because too, like if we're discouraged from traveling, it makes it a bit more difficult too to.
Oh, it's all online. All of it's online.
Oh, all of it's online. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the challenge too that I find as I slowly dwindle out of money, how much money I can put towards upskilling or taking on new courses and stuff like that. Absolutely.
And look, I think I have mentioned this before, but with the OCA stuff that Jamie and I have been working on, we've been trying to look for ways to make sure everyone's aware of what's on offer at the moment through the positions available. That link I've just thrown up there is the link to the Seek portal, where any of our operators who have got jobs on offer, they let us know what their Seek ID is, and we can put it into the portal, which is being housed on the OCA website now. There's only one job up there at the moment. There was a couple the other day, so they must have closed. But that's often a good opportunity to just look at as it starts coming out, to see what is coming through the market and the industry. Yeah, I don't know if I can add any more for you, David, but it's out in New South Wales, because I go across the whole sector, it can be chalk and cheese, because we actually do cover all of the education side as well as the operator, the tourism side, everything. So, but that is a great benefit, because what I've been able to do with my Friday forums that I hold is bounce each of the relevant sectors off each other and identify some of the opportunities for others.
That all sounds very positive to me. Thanks very much for sharing that, Laurie. I think it is a great time to do learning.
And guys, if there is anything, I'm happy to put it out there. I think I told you when I first came on to Inside the Outhouse that a lot of my history is more in the tourism side. So if any of you are wanting to look into going into that side of the sector, I really encourage you to reach out to me because, yeah, I've been talking to a few that are willing to look at it. And there's a few things and a few key areas that I might be able to connect you with to start identifying some of those opportunities as an individual, as people start climbing walls and wanting to get out of their house and exploring some of their own backyard when they can. Obviously, Victoria's a little bit in a horrible predicament right now, and that's a long while off, but certainly in New South Wales, ACT, WA, etc. Yeah, we're in a position where we can capitalise on tourism.
Thanks, Laurie. I might just throw it out to, we've got a few more people who've joined us. I just might call on Crunky or Jared. Depends on how you know him. I've worked for Jared a little bit, as has Pete and probably a few other people in the room here. I think he's actually on program at the moment, which is the ideal way to involve yourself in the Outhouse. So if you've still got a good connection, Jared.
Yeah, mate. Still got a good connection.
Would love to hear what your take is currently on probably firstly what your program's doing during the transition period, sort of pre-post COVID, but and how you're managing freelancers, and if you're still having a management process with people coming through your programming.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Look, I think as Chris sort of said, it's sort of just a bit of an area where I don't know. We're a school that is run purely on our own sort of back. We've got enough finance and resources to do our own programming, and we can go out at the drop of a hat if we get permission. So we can go anywhere and do anything we want. It's kind of a bit of a luxury, but I have heard from a few other outdoor education sort of schools and that sort of stuff who are starting to consider whether outdoor education is a subject they want to continue. So that concerns me a little bit. In terms of us, we've got a core set of staff that are actually well trained, and we've put a lot of effort into making sure they know the culture of the school and they know the culture of what we want to get out of our program. So that helps a lot. We haven't had to rely too much on outside freelance people at the moment, but we do have a casual staff, and I'm concerned about our casual staff because, especially with these programs being in jeopardy, as soon as that we get shut down, we've had a number of bookings cancelled. I don't have work for these people, and I've just got to let them go. They haven't been fired per se, but they haven't been employed either. So they're definitely not getting money or anything like that. So we're keen to keep having them work, but I can't actually offer them any work. So that's what concerns me, is that we'll end up losing really valuable employees who we've put a lot of energy and effort into training the way we sort of teach and the resources we use and how we do things. So that concerns me. I am a little bit hopeful that we're also using this time to get more PD and use that to gain more skill sets and that sort of stuff. But for instance, a number of us are out of our first aid is out. So we can't get on a course. We've tried to get on courses and there's just nothing around. So we're now running at a point where we have half the staff who don't have a first aid certificate in wilderness first aid. So we're trying to manage that the best we can, trying to jump through every loophole we can to keep operating with qualifications that aren't now matching what we are doing. So that's something that concerns me as well. But I think in the end of the day is if we can keep everything open, from our point of view, we're pretty solid and good. As soon as things start shutting, and I've had quite a significant argument just recently with national parks because our whole program for Year 9 has changed. We're now doing base camping and day trips because we can't get the group size into the national park location that we want. So that's caused a bit of angst, and we're about to have a Year 6 program cancelled, unless, again, national parks can let us actually camp where we're trying to camp. So we're cancelling programs, not necessarily for our own reasons. It's for other reasons. So that's sort of where we're at the moment.
What would be, and I guess this is for the room generally. I know I'm one of the people who currently is unemployable because I don't have a wilderness first aid or a CPR because I can't get onto a course. And I know Corf advertised a 2-day course recently, but it wasn't going to be the level I needed. So what would the industry people in the room here think about, coming up with solutions that would get a bunch of, floating freelancers and, staff from Churchy and various other places who actually have needs together to run courses that are, I guess, vital for our industry to continue to survive, I guess.
Dave, just to add to my point, what we've done is we're trying to get a few of the key players that do Wilderness First Aid. We're trying to get them to do online courses for the majority of it, and then only a short amount of practical elements. So that's sort of where we're at, and we're having limited success. So I'll just leave it at that.
Frankie, I've know your programs a bit. With your casual stuff, I know you've done a lot of work on kind of managing the COVID response of the outdoor ed department. So I was wondering whether you could maybe just speak on how you've managed COVID for those casuals who are coming on just for those program weeks, and who might be exposed in other areas, how you're managing that. And I know you've put together a COVID plan that is working on how you control keeping people distant, but I was wondering how you were talking to your casuals about that, how you were getting people across that plan, so that when they come on a program, if they're not in the office outside of those programming times, they're aware of all that stuff.
Yeah, okay. So what I did I've had a number of casual staff not be able to attend for various reasons. So we've had a few casual staff come in and out. What I've generally done is I've got a COVID safe plan, which I send them. But I've also backed that up with a few other emails and correspondence with them. Basically, in that email, I've taught them how PPE works. I've taught them how what sort of expectations we have for staff. So we're going along the lines of what we do is what the kids will see. So we need to be the example. So I've tried to educate the staff that if we need to be the example, you need to follow these sort of requirements. I've also sent them a number of online videos. So you can go and do the COVID safe. I'm just trying to remember what it's called. So it's an online course. It takes about half an hour. So they're not allowed to work for us unless they've passed that. And it's pretty easy to pass, but they have to do that course.
Isn't it, Jared? That one?
Sorry, what was that?
I think it's the government's COVID one.
Yeah, it's the government one, but it means that we can at least say that they've all acknowledged it and been through it. What we've also done is we've had a lot of chats about the fact that I'm at an all boys school, and the boys are in class together. They're playing a lot of sport on the weekends, and so these boys they're not socially distancing. Let's put it that way. They struggle to do that even at the best of times. So we had a really good chat about making sure that we're making sure we're doing common sense things, but probably staying on the cautious side of it. So not trying to just hammer it down the boys' throats, because they just won't respond to that. So it's more about just trying to use a common sense approach and encourage them to do it rather than forcing a blind obedience, I guess. So that's the big ones that we've sort of pushed towards. The email that I sent out probably helped the most, just showing them how to use PPE, how to actually enforce some of the things that we're talking about and why.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Jared. Very informative. Henry, you want to go ahead?
I think it's a good point you raised, though, Jared, about like something for casuals or freelancers is to do some of that COVID safe training. across the board. I've done the government's infection control training and a few other different ones. I know some of the places have asked me to do specific
Good. I just like to take a moment. We've got Michael Commons, who I actually know better as Snapper in the
Sorry,
room.
Pete.
Sorry. Am I talking or is other people talking? I'd just like to introduce Michael Commons into the room. He's perhaps a long-term freelancer, and sort of invited him in the room to just talk about the perspective of a freelancer. And maybe we could just swing the conversation a bit towards, are there any barriers to being a freelancer in the outdoor education field? And if there are, what are they? And, you know, let's just have a conversation a bit around those areas, please.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me speak today, Pete. I think probably the freelancing has you know, both a lot of advantages and you know, some disadvantages, and you're constantly always balancing those two aspects up. Certainly from the positive side of things, being a freelancer means that you work in a variety of different venues, and you get a really broad exposure to a different range of programs and the different styles of program delivery as well. So it adds a real richness to the nature of the work. I think one of the most common themes for barriers for freelance people is, particularly if you've got a family and regular accommodation start, you know, related bills, is the financial aspect of it. And you seem to kind of always be, because of the stop-start nature of the casual work, you've got a fairly good flow of work for during school terms, and then of course there's not really much income coming in over the school holidays. So when you if you've got, you know, like my rent's reasonable, about $400 a week, and by the time you take that out and just basic living expenses, there's not generally much left over. And then probably one of the main causes of concern or anxiety is both having the desire to upskill and get extra qualifications in various aspects of for specific activities to boost your employability and worth on a program. But those programs are really expensive, and then, you know, we're just having to maintain the basics like first aid and getting out to the programs because the petrol's expensive. Basically, it's always that thought in the back of your mind is, you know, it's an expensive job to have in many respects from that regard. So I've been managing that since I've come back to outdoor ed about a bit over 12 months ago, after having a stint in architecture. And you know, the richness, the reward is in the joy of the job, not in the financial reward, and that's why I keep doing it. Being out in the outdoors and working with young people, and you know, getting a group to go through the changes that they do on a program is one of the real strengths of outdoor ed, and Pete and I've spoken about this personally on a few occasions. So yeah, really, it's always that thought in the back of your mind that, you know, it's great having regular income. You know, when I was doing architecture work, even though that's a pretty volatile industry in itself, there's that real sort of monkey on your back about the money is always there. And I managed that with the holiday period by doing hospitality work over at Stradbroke. So I was just working in one of the cafe restaurants over there in the holiday time, and you know, and then as soon as that outdoor ed would pick up, you know, I'd prioritize that. I had a really good arrangement with the people that work over there. Yeah, so the other thing is, you know, keeping up with your gear. It's I know some centres provide some gear for their outdoor staff, but it's again one of those things that you want to maintain good gear all the time, and it's just working out what your priority is for the next bit of gear that you're going to buy based on how much money you can scrape together, and you know, maintain your quality of equipment when you're out there. So obviously, you know, some things like most recently I've upgraded a harness and climbing helmets and that sort of thing, just because that needed to be done. I think the only other probably barrier is if you've got a young family, being away for so much for you know, extended periods of time during the week can have an impact on your connection with home.
Let's maybe open the conversation to the room. Thank you very much for those wise comments, Snapper. You speak like a lifer, mate. Let's maybe open the conversation to the room and unpack maybe a little bit about the family barrier and what other people in the room have thoughts on that area, please.
I'll go ahead and echo some of what Michael said, because I've had this discussion with Dave and Pete before about as I get older and you know, I have a family. Well, I have a husband and 2 dogs right now, but even getting away from them, like the idea of going interstate for even a week or a couple weeks at a time or months at a time is very difficult because my husband doesn't like it when I leave. But then also the idea that we're planning to start a family soon, and that's going to make it even more difficult as a female in the field to be able to do any freelance work or casual work at that, unless it's really close by, because it'll be very difficult to leave a small child, or it will be impossible.
I'll just add to that comment. The world of working in the outdoors and teaching in the outdoors, I think particularly over extended expedition type programming, is a very emotional job, and it's all the senses really. And I think if you're doing that as a freelancer over even a week of time or 2 weeks of time, I think you return perhaps to the people who you need to be most emotionally devoted to, your loved ones, your family, and you're almost emotionally spent. And I've always found that a really difficult transition.
One of the things I've talked with Laurie and others about is trying to develop some pathway opportunities in the future, for people at various stages in the industry. And people might stay in the industry for a while, go and work somewhere else, come back when they're older. I mean, I run a company. I've been running it for 30 odd years. I've been thinking of becoming a freelancer at some stage and just going around and doing the bits that I feel that would be good fun to do and use my expertise that way. But it might be that as a broader industry, we need to have a bit of a more formal look at what the opportunities are for various people at various times. A good example is who provides the equipment. Anyone that comes into my company, I provide all my leaders with all the gear, and it's all quality gear, and that's because I like consistency. And if I provide someone with equipment, it's theirs. They take it off with them. I don't drag it back into store. So my investment on an instructor might be, say, an abseiling instructor might be $400 or $500 worth of outdoor gear, but that's not a lot. That's only a couple of days' wages at the end of the day. And that's where I want people to work with me for a little while, because I don't want the day in, day out type stuff. But I think as an industry, we could come up with maybe some solutions for the future.
Yeah, it's fairly valid. I agree. Okay. No one obviously wanted to speak about barriers. Well, maybe Rosie wants to say something.
Yeah, if I can.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm in a very similar situation as Cherie, where I've worked internationally 6-7 weeks at a time or away every term, 6 days out in the field, then 1 day at home, and then repeat, eat, sleep, talk to kids, all that emotional stuff. So that's a massive barrier. And my observation is in the field that there are less and less female instructors, because obviously family and females play a very big role in that. So that sort of limits us in ways, especially I live a few hours out of Melbourne, so for me I also have to travel, so that for me I can't just do 1 day of work. I have to commit to a bunch of days or weeks, otherwise it just doesn't work with the travel there, accommodation, etc. So yeah, I think it would be cool if there were some employers willing to get women back on board, even after, not as mature age, but in a sense like they're returning to work.
Rosie, do you find we did invite the big players in the market? We reached out to our contacts at OEG and Outward Bound to try and get them in, because they obviously employ a lot of people in the freelance market on occasion when there's a need for them. We've got a massive big school coming through. But I've always found that in the marketplace, female instructors are always highly valued, because they sometimes serve a specific niche. A client might be an all-female school and they want their leading instructors to be females. Are you not finding that at the moment, outside of the pandemic having huge impacts on the industry across the whole? But
or put COVID aside, it's generally pretty good for a female freelancer to get work over a male. That's what I feel like. I have no issue finding the work when it's available, but given the time we're in, it's not happening there. But I think the older you get, maybe employers might be more reluctant, because they want the young, bouncy freelancers, fresh.
Not
all the
sorry.
time.
I wanted to add to that I think kind of what she was saying earlier is that, like, when even as in my late 20s, I'm not in my late 20s anymore, I'm in my early 30s, but when I was in my late 20s working with companies like OEG in general, I was one of the oldest females that were on their freelance or their casual staff. And that's what I found, like the older I got, the more I realized how young all the other females were. There's far fewer females within my age range of late 20s to the 30s and maybe even 40s.
But is that females working in all areas of the company, Cherie, or just in the field?
Yeah, I would say just in the field, because I think that's a difference. A lot of females end up, if they can find full-time work in it, that's what they're going to go to over freelance type casual work.
Just reflecting on all of the Facebook pages with freelance guides, the new freelance guides, or the outdoor activity union, the guys that are trying to set up a union, and that. One of the things that seems to recur is the amount of money people get paid. Yeah, I know it's not the only thing, but we don't pay well, or as an industry, and that I believe that's something we really need to seriously look at. In fact, and a lot of people at higher level will say we don't charge enough for what we do. We don't, therefore we can't pay. So I think probably that's one of the barriers to a lot of people remaining as freelance guides. You can't just get employed, paid a couple of $100 a day for the sorts of work we expect of people. I pay $340 a day for a casual guide. And I reckon that's not enough.
Hi, my name's Sam. I'm the business manager for Binderee in Victoria. I guess we've been smashed as much as anyone in Victoria. And to put it this way, my 10 years in the industry, I think one of the biggest barriers for freelance is actually burnout, which is a lot of, you guys were talking about that mental side of putting your heart and soul into, 6 a.m. on a Monday through to 7 p.m. on a Friday night, and then have to get home, wash all your clothes, and then pack your bag again, ready for a Sunday leave. It's huge. And for me, my biggest passion is trying to make this profession a career choice for people. And way of doing that, I'm lucky, that fortunate being a part of Binderee. We're quite a large employer in Victoria, that we can start to try and set up contracts for casual staff to be on for a long period of time, so they can try and get paid for while they're not in the field as well. So from a freelance perspective, it's, as I said, I've been in the industry 10 years and I've watched friends come and go. It's generally probably a 3-year turnaround on staff, and it hurts a business as well, because you lose your experience at the same time, as well as having to retrain continually all the way through. And as we said earlier, that you just lose staff to new training or new career progression. A lot of them seem to go into the emergency services. But yeah, I think the biggest barrier for freelancers is just burnout. It's plain and simple, because they only get paid for when they're in the field.
Samuel, you're dead right, and I think you highlighted an area that I could see quite early on when I came in, which is a lack of career pathing that the sector has, and it's something that really we need to look at seriously, because I don't know if everyone's up with the latest news, but Charles Sturt University's just cancelled all their outdoor education courses in New South Wales last week, and purely, they say, based on numbers, but I fully believe it's because people have no awareness or understanding of the sector, as well as our, as I said before, our reputation's really not out there. But there is also that lack of career pathing. Where can it take me? What can it give me? Where can I go? So very valid points there.
Guys, I was just going to give a perspective of a young father. I've got a 2-year-old at home, and my wife's pregnant at the moment. It's tough for me to get out bush. Last night, my wife let me know that she wasn't too pleased on me going away for another week. So that was pretty tough, and I let her know that, it's part of my job, that. And that's always a tough conversation to have with a loved one. So it's even hard for us males, I guess. I definitely feel for any female in our industry, because I know how hard my wife works at her job, and she drives there 10 minutes, 15 minutes away. So when you're away a whole week, it's hard enough for me being away from my daughter. So it'd be hard to be a mother and away from a child who needs you and that sort of stuff. So I kind of feel for the females that are in our industry, and I guess I understand why we probably have less females in the industry, because of family and that career path. I chose to be a teacher for that reason. I was international expeditioning. I was doing a lot of freelance work, and I couldn't get a loan for a house. I couldn't sustain a relationship because I was just constantly away. So there was big pressure to just sort of get into a more stable job to make sure that I could have a family and do all those things that I wanted to do. And I've definitely noticed that some of the freelance guys that are working for us, who are exceptional instructors, are now starting to consider the teaching sort of career and looking that sort of direction. So I've definitely noticed the shift in their attitude, whereas beforehand they weren't interested, or they were just simply like, no, not for me. And now they're definitely changing their tune since COVID sort of happened. I've been very encouraging, but it's definitely noticeable the difference in their attitude, and noticing that people are more are taking jobs that are easy and they know they've got that work, they'll take that first. So it is getting harder to lock people into positions. So that was just my point from a young father.
And I was just going to say, I think we'll see more of that too, with people realizing the instability of outdoor educators at some, in some level, or they out at the freelance casual work, that you might see that might have later implications in people willing to go into the field, or willing to take the risk rather than a more secure job.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I was just going to say, well, I appreciate your perspective. Sorry, I don't know your name, Cronky. Don't know you. I've written in the comments, I think we're ignoring the structural inequalities that exist in society that don't support women doing those things. And you've just given a good example of that in your description of your response to your wife, that that's your job and she knows that. And, I've had those conversations at home too, but I'd have to ask how many of the men that are in this meeting who go into the field, who are in relationships, have a female partner or a partner at home looking after their household and their children or their elderly relatives or whatever the case may be. There are structural inequalities that exist in our society that are reinforced by our government. Our Prime Minister is a good example in point. And one of the major barriers to women in this industry, which is, I know Pete was not the focus of this afternoon's discussion, it was freelance barriers or freelancing, but it is a major structural barrier to women. One of the things I discussed with my students is some of the research that's been done by Glyn Thomas and Brendan about what employers want and issues like burnout and so forth. There's some really good writing about that. Jamie's put some links up to some stuff in the UK. Brendan's put something up. There's all sorts of reasons. And David, good to hear you talking about pay. I think that's something that comes up all the time. Poor pay. What are the other things that students say? So obviously I'm coming from a university perspective, and I will preempt the criticism that our students come out and they don't have enough practical experience. It's a university course. We're not training. It's not a TAFE course, a Cert 4 course. We don't claim that they have the same level of experience. But one of the barriers to university graduates trying to freelance is this constant requirement for pieces of paper and refusal to acknowledge that they do actually have some capacity. And a capacity, I guess it's what I've observed over 20 odd years is an inability and unwillingness, particularly in Victoria, to look beyond certification. So I see that as a barrier. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kathleen. I was just going to say those are some really great points, and would love to, if you wanted to message me privately, I might, we might discuss some of those points in future ones. And I'll only say that because we're running out of time and we have something exciting to show you guys. But I think those are great points that you brought up. So we're definitely interested in maybe talking about some of those more in the future.
I just wanted to say one thing, sort of just a reply to what Kathleen was saying, just on those last points about university and TAFE and increased certifications. And I've taught stuff in both of those sort of sectors, but I kind of feel like what we're really dealing with is a broader societal move towards people wanting more certification. So if you're an engineer or if you're a teacher and you want to get into the TAFE area, you still have to go and do your TAE, even though you've done like 3 years of degree and all the rest of it. And with engineers, they still have to go back and do a whole bunch of other stuff back in the field to be able to operate. So there's a whole range of different things that we're dealing with, and I think part of the reason why we're ending up having to deal with some of these issues is that we are becoming more of an industry now. So that's what we still have to wrestle with, some of those details.
I think it's also the onus of the employer to be able to map the difference between a university and a TAFE qualification. So for us, we get a lot of people from La Trobe, Bendigo, VU University working for us, but it's the onus of myself and our staffing manager to look at those qualifications and map that against what is requirement from an Australian activity standard. So we don't ask specifically for qualification, but it's the owners of Binderee, I'm talking from our perspective, to say student from university and map that. And if I have to then call the university to clarify or get reference checks against that, then that's on us. I don't think that's necessarily on the employee.
That's great to hear, Sam, because it's certainly, as you're probably aware, not the experience of a lot of graduates.
Yeah, and I think it's not a fair experience either, because I've got a lot of managers who work for me that come from a university background, and they're fantastic, and it's not anything to do with that. And as I said, like, I might have to put more training into the educational side of staff coming out of the TAFE sector, and then maybe I have to do a little bit more practical training with the university. But that's on me to bring up my employees to a standard that I want them to work at, not necessarily the RTOs or the university.
It's very, very pertinent conversation, Kathleen and Samuel. Thank you very much for your input. I'll just segue to a chat that we're potentially going to have around tertiary training on the 24th of August, when we'll be able to unpack this whole conversation a bit further in the Outhaus. And I'd like to just thank all of your participation around the chat around the freelance topic, which is obviously a very big topic here today. I'd just like to segue over to Cherie and Henry potentially to give us some new news, and then we'll close out the session. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Pete. I'm just going to share my screen with you guys and show you what we've been working on this week. Give me a moment. Hopefully that'll work. Can everybody see my screen now? Oops. All right, so what we've been working on this past couple of weeks is a new website. We've had to shift from our ACU SharePoint, so we discussed some of the best ways to provide the information to you guys, and we wanted it to be more of an open forum so that everybody can have access to it. So we've been working on this website that tells you what we do. It'll be a great point of reference for all of our different activities about us. We have videos, all of our resources are in here. We're working on putting all the information in with videos. So if you want to access our videos, you can go here and you'll be able to find a little bit about it, who the presenter is, and then be able to watch it on the screen right there. Same with resources. So all the resources that we get into inside the Outhaus, we try to put up on we were putting up on the SharePoint. Now you have access to them here via links, and there's all kinds of different great things here by category for you guys to check out. And then if you would like to join in on the discussion, because sometimes it takes us a little while to come up with ideas sometimes. So we're definitely open to more ideas. And I think you guys have brought up some really good ones in tonight's session. So if you want to join in, we've got a little section here where you can actually add your own opinion. We've got a debate going, which I just learned was actually a debate, was whether you should use campfires or not. So definitely interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And then we'll probably be posting a few more things in here. On the side here, we also have access to all the the main outdoor websites, so you can link to those and find out more information about us. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to add that I missed in here?
We're going to get it working with our actual insidetheouthouse.org, but it's not currently working. So if anyone's got any good tech skills, drop us a line directly. We're having a bit of a technical problem getting it working on a better URL, but it'll be up soon.
And if anybody does notice anything on here, aside from our newly learned how to, how to do webinars, how to do SharePoint, we're now learning how to do WordPress and everything else. So if you do notice any errors in it, please feel free to let us know so that we can fix those. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the Outhaus, it's all about learning, really.
All right, I think we have Henry's put our video of the week and our quote of the week into the chat. The best advice I've received is that you should always go for new opportunities and adventures. You never know where you will go. That's a great quote. It's pretty much my motto now with most job opportunities. Just put in for them. You never know where it's going to go.
Okay, and just in closing, I'd like to just thank Michael Snapper Commons, Andrew Critter Boyle, Jared Crunky Crunkhorn, and all the other people who gave input into this great session on freelancers. We could probably talk about this subject for about the next 5 hours, but thanks very much for all your input, and have a great week, and we'll see you inside the Outhaus next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, David.